Hi, I'm Sammy and welcome to the Gig House Kitchen. Today I'm making the great and beautiful emrata. Yes, that's Emily Ratajkowski's favourite breakfast pastry, known as Au Kouign. Au Kouign? Au Kouign? Just kidding folks, it's Au Kouign Amann. Don't ask me where the spelling comes from, probably the same place as this spelling of fish. So if you want to know how I made this buttery, flaky, slightly maddening delight, then keep watching. So what are Au Kouign Amann? They're essentially Breton's version of a
I could have dropped my croissant!
But with the addition of lots of slightly salted sugar. I've never made these before, and they're supposedly one of the hardest pastries to make, so wish me luck. For those who don't know, Au Kouign Amann, just like croissants, are made with a yeasted dough that has been laminated. So to begin, I will be making an enriched bread dough. Here in my bowl, I have 250 ml of slightly warm water, to which I'm adding a tablespoon of white sugar, and I'm pouring in 7 grams of active dry yeast and leaving it for 15 minutes. The warm water and sugar will help activate the yeast and give us a head start on the rise. Once the yeast is bloomed, as you'll see mine's all bubbled up here, we're going to add 300 grams of strong bread flour, 1 teaspoon of salt, and 2 tablespoons of melted butter, which I'm just mixing together with a wooden spoon. And then I'm pouring the mix out onto a well-floured work surface to give the dough its first knead. Here's where things went a little bit pear-shaped for me. As you'll see, my mix ended up being a little bit too wet. The recipe I used by Food Wishes, whose video I will link in the description, said to use 2.5 cups of flour, which roughly translates to about 300 grams. But I think for me this wasn't enough, and I ended up having to knead in about another 100 to 150 grams of flour to get my dough to the right texture. Flour can be a bit tricky as it will absorb more or less water depending on factors like the heat and humidity of the kitchen or the type of flour. It's best to keep more flour than you think you'll need on standby just in case yours decides to be unruly. This is why baking can be so frustrating to learn, because you'll follow a recipe to a T and it still won't come out quite right. That's why it's best to practice as much as possible so you can master the skills. We need the dough to help develop the gluten and ensure that the yeast is well incorporated into the mix. Next, we need to let the bread dough rise. Here I have my glass bowl, which I have washed and greased with a small amount of oil. I'm placing my dough ball into the centre of the bowl and leaving it covered in a warm place for about 1 to 2 hours, or until the dough has doubled in size. While I was waiting for the dough to rise, I went ahead and mixed up my salt and sugar, which will be sprinkled over the dough later on. I mixed about 140 grams of white sugar with about 2 teaspoons of salt. That seems like a lot, but the finished pastry doesn't actually end up being that sweet. Continuing with our bready theme, we need to knock the air out of this dough so that we can start laminating. So I gave the dough a little quick knead and then start the rolling process. I rolled until I had a large rectangle of dough ready for me to roll in my first stick of butter. Yes, there are not 1 but 2 sticks of butter in this recipe. So here you'll see I have my first stick of butter. As per the recipe, I froze my butter stick, which you'll see I then grated. I found this process a bit painful. It took ages to grate the butter and I found it quite hard to work with. I think if I did this again, I would probably use the more traditional laminating method, where you squash all the butter into a rectangular sheet and then incorporate it in one go. I also think this grating method meant I ended up putting too many turns into the dough as well, which I think made my pastry slightly tough after baking. Here you'll see I'm just wrapping the butter up in his little blankie. Comment down below if you know what that's in reference to. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe because it really supports the channel. As I was rolling and laminating, which means folding the dough into thirds and rolling it out again, you'll see I sprinkled the sugar mixture between the layers as I went. Once I was done, I put the dough into some parchment paper to let it chill in the freezer for a few minutes. I don't think this step is necessary, but my kitchen was a bit hot, which was making the dough hard to work with. So while I was waiting, I prepped my muffin tray ready for the dough. Oof. Honestly, that was a bit of a workout, but we're at the last hurdle now. After lovingly cleaning off my work surface, I sprinkled some of my sugar and salt mix down and then rolled the dough over it. I took the chilled dough and rolled it into as square a shape as I could. Then I cleaned up the edges using a pizza cutter ready to be portioned. As you'll notice, dumb butt here clearly can't count because I only marked out 9 portions from the dough, which I didn't realise until I was actually putting it into the tray. I was a bit distracted while shooting this and managed to not only forget my filming light. I say filming light, it's a lamp from my living room. What you don't see behind the scenes. But I also managed to forget to record me putting the flour into the bowl earlier, and I had to do a reshoot of that clip. It's all cool though because I made some nice bread rolls out of it. Double bake, yeah. Anyway, I managed to use the scraps I'd cut off to make the last few portions, which is why they ended up being a bit smaller. I didn't really want to mush all the dough back together and cut it out again, as apparently that can ruin the lamination. There's apparently lots of different ways to present Au Kouign Amann, but I chose this crown design because, full disclosure, it seemed like the easiest option. To do this, you literally just gently push the corners together and drop them into the tin. Once they're in the tin, I give them their last little sprinkling of sugar before they go in the oven. My oven could be a stand-in for the fires of Hades, so I set the temperature at 160 degrees Celsius and bake them for about 25 to 30 minutes. As you can see, when they come out of the oven, they have these nice flaky layers. As Food Wishes mentions in his video, you want to remove these from the pan while they're still warm, otherwise the salted caramel will literally weld them in place. So let's see the reveal. Check it out, peeps, I made Au Kouign Amann. I've got to say, emrata has good taste because these are absolutely bomb. I wouldn't say these are difficult, they're more finicky. If you just use a confident hand, you'll get through it. Thanks so much for watching. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe and give us a thumbs up. See you next time on the Gig House Kitchen. Bye.